cities across the West, but especially in the United States. Paris is getting it right now, isn't it? But especially in the United States since the summer of 2020. And I think there wasn't a city on the West Coast, a major city on the West Coast, that wasn't spared a lot of the chaos. And people, even people who persist in their pre-George Floyd, pre-COVID beliefs about what should and should not be happening at a policy level are looking around saying, this isn't safe. I don't feel safe. I need to figure out how to protect myself. So we've got a guy who teaches firearm skills and safety to small groups of people at a long-established gun range and school. And many of his students who come in with no experience, of course, but also sometimes they're vocally anti-gun. And they feel they have no choice to be there because they're looking around their neighborhoods going, I actually need to figure out how to protect myself. But they resent it. They're sullen. Often these same people who are sullen, who will come into these classes, talking, being explicitly loud about, I don't want to be here. I don't think guns are a good idea. They're there. They're also often masked. It's not maybe a huge surprise that those are overlapping populations even now. But this instructor reports that in a recent class, this again happened, and there were, it's a small class, but a good portion of the people were, started out resentful, sullen, vocally resistant to what they were there doing, masked, not interacting with the rest of the people. And that by the end, there was none of that. It disappeared. People were laughing together, talking, sharing stories, learning from each other. Everyone take their masks off. Like literally, and I think figuratively, everyone had taken their masks off. And the guy who's telling me this says, it's not about the guns. The guns aren't bringing people together. That's not what's going on. He said, I think what it is about connecting outside of your comfort zone and interacting with strangers, frankly, with people who you didn't know, before, and coming together around something that is challenging, that is tough, that is a real skill that can be learned, but that you need to focus and pay attention. And you can learn not just from the person who's supposedly teaching you, but from your peers as well. This is broadening and it's humanizing, and it's something that so many of us have missed out on and lost access to starting just about 3 years ago now.
Yeah, the sense that I have is, whenever we try this thing where we confess our doubts to people and they ante up by confessing their doubts, right, there is a palpable sense of relief. Mm-hmm. And I have the sense that most people are living in this tightly constrained narrative where they know what they are expected to believe, and they half convince themselves that is what they believe, and they say it out loud and other people affirm them. And so they're living in this sort of terrified state.
Yes.
And just as there was something awful about being locked down in our homes at the beginning of the pandemic, when in fact what we should have been doing is gathering outside, right? Gathering outside. Okay, so there's a pathogen and spreading inside of buildings, but we can go outside and talk about it and not be fearful, right? Yeah. That sense of relief is so important. And from the perspective of those who wish to maintain control over us, it is necessary that we find ways to break that hegemony over us. Mm-hmm. And I think the natural human part is if you take that risk and you do let your guard down and you dare to say what you actually think, you're actually concerned about, you will paradoxically feel so much better to discover that you're really not alone. And I suspect that's what happened on the gun range.
Yeah, I suspect so too. And it's, it may seem to some that, it's easy for us to say at this point, right? That, we've been doing it for 3 years, but, of course, taking an awful lot of shit for doing so. And there's, of course, the majority of people in the world don't know what our positions are when we interact with them. And every single time, I mean, you've just said this, but I'm just going to repeat it. Like every single time that I have been in a situation where I'm interacting with someone who, I'm a stranger to them and they're a stranger to me. It's it's a barista, it's a waitress, it's a dry cleaner, it's a retail, it's a cashier, Uber driver, something, right? In any number of things. And you say something that suggests anything that isn't in lockstep with what, given the place you're in, which is to say, like, if you're in a West Coast city, you know what you're supposed to believe on any number of topics. And if you say something that suggests anything outside of lockstep, it is almost universal that what you get is first cautious and then like just an outpouring of conversation and relief on both sides and connection. You don't end up getting glared at and yelled at and hated, and that certainly happens. But if you're taking as evidence of how people feel what you see on social media, it's not a good rendering of what is actually happening in the world.
Yeah, it's actually a co-opting of a natural circuit where we're supposed to be able to assess what people think just based on our interactions with them and what is apparent. Right. And because the narrative control is so powerful, we get a very wrong impression about how unified people are in believing certain things, whether it's in our city or across the net. I'm also struck, as you know, we watched The Big Short again last night, just really as a refresher on what had happened in 2008.
I said to you, I think it might be time to rewatch that movie.
I was struck, actually. I can't really believe I didn't put it together. Maybe I've just forgotten. But, the bulk of the movie is spent in this excruciating period where the people who had seen what was taking place in the housing market placed their bets, but the evidence that they were correct is oddly delayed, and everybody is shouting at them about how stupid they've been and how they're going to be losing all of the money that has been entrusted to them.
And as far as what's public, the most parsimonious explanation is, you guys, you 3%, if you will, you were wrong.
Right.
You were wrong. And like, yeah, of course it's possible, but no, what we're seeing is evidence of such deep fraud. That is what we are seeing right now. And no, that's not the most parsimonious explanation. Yes, that's evidence of conspiracy, but you know what? That's what's going on.
Yeah, well,
and they were right.
It is the most parsimonious, but not at that point. It was impossible to see it.
In terms of what was visible to the rest of the world.
Right. Yeah. And so anyway, I think, you and I have been suffering from this very thing throughout much of the pandemic, where just simply following the evidence where it led to excruciating levels of pressure from, in many cases, quite close quarters, right? Back off, you're wrong, you're killing people, all of these claims, which of course turn out to be nonsense. It's, yes, the analysis was difficult, but it's not that difficult, right? If you're not responding to the pressure. But in any case, I think it has to be described as the consequence of the cognitive dissonance that comes from doing exactly the thing you were trained for, right? Scientific analysis, and having it put you at odds with all sorts of people who claim that that's what they're doing, it's torture. But in the end, reality is what it is. Nature bats last. And I fear that they will be able to drag out a recognition of what has taken place for many decades, but the truth will out, and pretending that it is other than it appears to be is no way to live.